We're here to talk about something that's becoming a little bit of a lost art, and that's going through the lock to try and gain access to somebody's apartment or house. And we're going to get into maybe why you might want to go through the lock rather than force the door, and also some tips and tools on how to make that job a little easier. First off is you could get a call where you're not really sure. Do you want to damage this door? Doors in the tri-state area are up around $500 and up. So is it really worth damaging this door? And you're going to break the lock too, trying to force it conventionally. We've gotten calls for CO detectors ringing. The neighbor might say, oh, there's an elderly lady lives there, something like that. We're going to try and maybe go through the lock if we can. Normally we might go through the window. But you might have bars on the window. It might be out of the reach of ladders, or maybe there's no fire escape or something like that. So we would attempt to see if we could go through the lock in that instance. After we've decided that maybe we want to try to go through the lock, that this call warrants going through the lock, we have to look at the locks that are on the door. And in this example, we have two locks. They're heavily protected. This one has tamper-proof screw heads. It's got a heavy plate. We're probably going to cause as much damage to this door getting this plate off as we would trying to force the door. So this would be an example of us not really wanting to go through this lock. We're not going to spend the time and effort and damage. This is an example of a lock that we would typically find. It's just got a simple brass bezel ring on it. It's not going to really present much of a problem to take that off, and we're going to be able to go through this lock fairly readily. This is a lock that's it's just begging us to go through the lock. It's got no protective cover. It's sticking well out of the door, and we're going to be able to get this rather quickly, either with the pliers or an A tool or something like that to pull this lock. We have here three examples of different types of lock shields. The rim lock that we talked about before with the bevel ring on it is typical of what we'd find, not that hard to get rid of. And then we have a more decorative ornamental, which is probably going to get damaged taking it off, but not the end of the world to try and peel this away and get this out of the way. And then we have a plate that's more security conscious person would install. And if we saw this, we might say, no, we're not going to try and go through the lock. It's going to be too much trouble, too much damage, and we'll wind up, we'll just force the door conventionally. This is what that lock cylinder to those rim locks actually looks like. And what you have is two bolts or screws are going to go through the door and attach the cylinder to the lock, and it's protected with that bezel ring that we spoke about. So we're going to take our screwdriver, we're going to pry this off and rip this off, and then we're going to use either a pair of pliers, twisting back and forth, or we're going to use an A tool or K tool and twist and pull and fatigue these and get them to fail. And once those screws fatigue, we'll be able to grab this cylinder, pull it out, and we'll be left with the slot that this key stem fit into. We'll be able to take our screwdriver, put it in there, and open that lock. What we have here is a longer version of what a lot of firefighters would carry is basically like an electrician screwdriver. We get a lot of calls for arcing wires, smoking fixtures. The firefighter has to remove that fixture. We examine those wires. So they need a thin screwdriver that can handle those thin-headed screws, and sometimes they're recessed, they're slotted in. But what I'm recommending is that you use a heavier screwdriver and just grind it down, make it thin enough that it can still do that job, and yet it has more strength that you're able to attack that bezel ring and get some other uses out of it. With all the weight of our PPE nowadays, you're up to 60, 70 pounds worth of gear. Anytime you can make a tool multi-purpose, that's really what you want to do. So that's what we've done here. We have a regular 7-inch screwdriver, and we've ground it a little thinner. And we also put a sharpened edge on it, and you'll see in a second how that's going to help us if this rim lock has a burglar shutter on it. It's going to help grab that, move that out of the way without us seeing or having to get too deep into trying to pick that open. This is that rim lock that we've been talking about, picking the cylinder and getting through. Once you remove that cylinder, you're going to have the door here, and there's going to be a little space, and you're going to have to take that screwdriver that we've modified, and we're going to stick it through there. But this particular lock, and many of them do, have a burglar shutter, so that when that stem to that lock cylinder gets pulled, this slips into place and prevents you from doing what we're going to attempt to do. But by grinding that little edge on that screwdriver, it allows you to stick it in there counterclockwise. It's going to march that burglar shutter over, and boom, we're able to unlock the lock. Next, we're going to actually pull the cylinder and go through this same type of lock. And thanks for watching. I'm John Buckheit.